Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea's exports so far this month are up more than 16% compared to a year ago, led by key products like semiconductors and automobiles. And the outlook is good for the year going forward. South Korea prepares to roll out its first vaccines this week. On Friday, it'll be the one from AstraZeneca, and on Saturday, the Pfizer vaccine. Detailed plans announced for who will get them and when. And President Moon Jae-in tells his top aides to speed up preparations for the next round of coronavirus relief payments to small businesses and the self-employed. Lawmakers need to approve an extra budget if those payments are to be made by next month. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. We start with the COVID-19 situation in South Korea. The nation reported 332 new cases on Monday, returning to the 300s for the first time in about a week. Even so, cluster infections continue across the nation, especially from churches and religious facilities. Of Monday's new cases, 313 were local, most of which were in the greater Seoul area. 19 were from overseas. 5 more people have died from the virus, raising the death toll to 1,562. President Moon Jae-in has asked his top aides to speed up preparations for the 4th round of coronavirus relief payments for small businesses and the self-employed who've taken a hit to their incomes in the pandemic. The president urged officials to quickly draft the extra budget needed to fund it and to ask the National Assembly for cooperation.
4차 재난지원금은 비계층 지원과 저소득 취약계층 보호, 고용위기 극복 등을 위해 사각지대를 최소화하며 최대한 폭넓고 두텁게 지원되도록 하겠습니다. 정부는 추경을 신속히 편성하고 국회의 협조를 구하여 가급적 3월 중에는 집행이 시작될 수 있도록 속도를 내주기 바랍니다.
President Moon also said the government will strengthen the active role of government funding to help small businesses, entrepreneurs, and low-income groups that experienced a drop in income in the last quarter of 2020. And South Korea's prime minister has laid out more details about the vaccinations that will start in the country on Friday. First will be the jab from AstraZeneca, as announced previously, and Pfizer's vaccine will be rolled out starting the very next day. Lee Kyung-eun has more.
It's a big week for South Korea as the country will begin its first rounds of COVID-19 vaccinations. The AstraZeneca vaccine will be rolled out starting at 9 a.m. on Friday for staff members and patients under the age of 65 at nursing hospitals and related facilities. From Wednesday to Sunday, SK Bioscience, which manufactures the AZ vaccine in the country, will transport the batches to a storage center in Icheon, Gyeonggi-do Province. Those batches will be enough to inoculate some 750,000 people. From there, the vaccines will be distributed to nursing hospitals and public health centers nationwide. Nursing hospitals will carry out inoculations on their own, but public health centers will set up vaccination centers for care homes that do not have the infrastructure to do that. On the same day, some 117,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine will arrive in the country from the Global Vaccine Supply Scheme, COVAX. And they'll be distributed starting on Saturday to inoculate 55,000 frontline medical workers. The first batch will be sent to the vaccination center in Seoul's National Medical Center, then to other state-run medical centers across the country. Doctors and nurses will need to visit those sites to get their shots. COVID hospitals with more than 120 staff needing vaccinations will carry out inoculations on site to prevent a staff shortage. The Food and Drug Safety Ministry previously granted the Pfizer vaccine emergency import approval, but it will hold its first consultative meeting with an independent advisory panel on Monday. It aims to give it an official approval like AstraZeneca's by the first week of March. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea's foreign ministry summoned a Japanese diplomat in Seoul on Monday to lodge a complaint over Japan holding an annual event where it publicly renewed its false claim to Korea's easternmost island of Dokdo. The deputy head of mission at the Japanese embassy, Hirohisa Soma, was seen heading into the foreign ministry earlier this afternoon. He was given a statement issued by the ministry saying that South Korea strongly protests Japan's futile claims to Dokdo and calls sternly for the immediate abolition of the event held in the Japanese prefecture of Shimane. It also stated that Dokdo is clearly recognized as Korean territory, taking into a context of history, geography, and international law. The city of Seoul has announced plans to make the Korean capital's urban landscape greener. The city is going to expand the plaza downtown at Gwanghwamun to make a pedestrian-friendly, tree-lined walkway from Gwanghwamun to Seoul Station. This will involve a major rerouting of traffic. The lanes of the road on the west side of the plaza will be closed and incorporated into the square. The lanes on the east side near the U.S. Embassy will be expanded and made into a two-way street. These changes will take effect on March 6th. South Korea's exports for the first 20 days of this month are up more than 16% from a year ago. This is largely thanks to strength in the country's key products, including semiconductors and automobiles. And the outlook is good in the months ahead. Ji-young reports.
South Korea's exports in the first 20 days of February grew at a double-digit rate from a year ago, mainly led by semiconductors and automobiles. According to the Korea Customs Service on Monday, the country's outbound shipments for the first 20 days of February recorded $30.4 billion, up 16.7% on year. And as there were fewer working days this February, the daily average rose by even more, up roughly 30% compared to the same period last year. One expert says South Korea's exports tend to show a strong performance in the first quarter of the year.
Exports are improving because of the recovering demand in the market, which had contracted due to COVID-19. But generally, January and February's exports tend to be higher than other months as vendors build up their inventories.
Customs data showed that solid exports were mainly led by semiconductors, which account for around 20% of the country's outbound shipments. Semiconductor exports jumped by around 28% compared to the same period last year. Exports of mobile devices also soared by about 34% on year, and automobiles skyrocketed by 46%. By country, exports to China saw a 33% rise on year in the first 20 days of February, and shipments to the US and the EU rose by 14% and 54% respectively. The experts said the country's outbound shipments will continue to improve this year.
Exports are projected to show an upward trend as the global demand is recovering.
February's strong export figures follow 3 months of increases in exports, with January's figures up by more than 11% on year, also led by major items including chips and autos. Ji-young, Arirang News.
South Korea so far has not been taxing gains from buying and selling cryptocurrencies, but that's going to change next year. If you make profits of more than about $2,200, then you'll owe 20% of the amount made above that. Kim Sung-min reports.
Starting next year in South Korea, Bitcoin, the world's biggest cryptocurrency by market capitalization, will no longer be a tax-free hobby or investment. According to the Ministry of Economy and Finance on Monday, income gained from trading Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies will be subject to taxation from January 1, 2022. Traders and investors will have to pay 20% tax when their annual income from cryptocurrencies exceeds 2.5 million won, or some $2,260. Let's say a person made 10 million won by trading or holding Bitcoin. Since up to 2.5 million won is exempt, 20% of the rest, which is 7.5 million won, is subject to taxation. So, that person would have to pay 1.5 million won in tax. In real terms, the tax will be levied on the net income that excludes the acquisition value and the commission fee paid to the cryptocurrency exchange.
For virtual assets held prior to 2022, the higher value between the original acquisition price or the market value at the end of this year will be considered the exempted acquisition value. This move comes after the government recognized Bitcoin as a financial asset categorized under other income. Profits will have to be reported on income statements with taxes to be paid every May. Those who fail to report their profits could be fined. With interest in Bitcoin exploding again in South Korea with the rapid rise in the Bitcoin price, the new tax has angered local cryptocurrency investors. A petition against the new tax posted on the presidential office's website on February 10th has already garnered over 38,000 signatures, and the figure is rising. The Blue House will be required to respond should the petition hit 200,000 signatures by the end of March. 김성민, Arirang News.
Now a look ahead at data and decisions to come this week from Korea and around the world. We'll be doing this every Monday from now on. The Bank of Korea is set to reveal its decision on interest rates. And the chair of the Federal Reserve will be testifying to Congress about the state of the American economy. Seoul has this report.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will present the semi-annual monetary policy report to the Senate Banking Committee on Tuesday local time, and the House Financial Services Committee a day after. The report, published on February 19th, stated that it will be appropriate to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 0 to 0.25% until the labor market reaches what the Fed views as the maximum in terms of employment as well as the 2% inflation rate. The Fed has maintained the federal funds rate since May last year. On Wednesday, Statistics Korea will release birth rates for December 2020. As of November last year, South Korea's birth had fallen on year for 60 consecutive months, and the number of deaths had outnumbered birth for 13 months in a row. The Bank of Korea's Monetary Policy Board will announce the base interest rate on Thursday. It is widely expected that the central bank will keep their rate unchanged. Last month, the bank decided to maintain the benchmark interest rate at 0.5%. The central bank stated that a weakened global economy due to COVID-19 had led them to make that decision. The base rate had been capped at its record low since last May. 서은경, Arirang News.
And time for an in-depth look at the market news on this Monday. For that, I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, good to have you back on.
Happy to be here.
Well, as we've seen in the past several sessions, the Kospi was up and down again today, in the end closing lower by 0.9%. Another down day on the Kosdaq, too. What's the story in the Korean markets today?
Okay, well, in the Korean market, as you mentioned, both Kospi and Kosdaq fell. Kospi by 0.9%, Kosdaq by 1.1%. It actually did fairly well for the first hour of trading. So it went above 30 line, but somehow, after about 11 o'clock, both indices started falling down. Kospi tried to make a recovery in the afternoon, but it didn't succeed. Now, the reason is a bit questionable, but analysts are generally attributing it to the U.S. market, concerns about rising inflation and rising interest rate on the U.S. 10-year bond yields. Overall, individuals bought today, institutions and foreigners sold.
Yeah, and the issue that you referenced there, the rising yields on Treasuries, seems to be influencing the U.S. markets. Futures down ahead of Monday's opening on Wall Street. But Professor, we're up against the clock today, so we'll have to catch up later this week and look at the U.S. markets then. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.